So here we go. Hey everyone, my name is Harrison Woods. I'm here with Chris Schwagerl here today. He is Schwagerl. Did I pronounce that right, Chris?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
awesome.
Schwaggle. It
Swaggle.
rhymes with bagel.
Swaggle. That's awesome. Now I'm never
Hmm.
gonna forget. So Chris, what Chris does specifically is that he works one-on-one with real estate syndicators specifically, and he helps them with I guess their business goals and achieving those goals and scaling the business. Am I correct, Chris?
Yeah. I essentially enable them to achieve their goals.
Awesome. So first question is like, how did you get to this point? I saw that you're a licensed, is that a clinical psychologist or a social worker?
Hmm.
Okay,
I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker.
awesome.
Yeah. So I got, well, ever since high school, I've been in like super interested in psychology. I think a lot of us are. We
Yeah.
want to know kind of like, how much does the environment impact me? How much do I impact the environment? I think most people around high school, you start to realize that I'm different in around my boys than I am around when there's ladies around, when there's teachers around, when I'm at church, when I'm at home, all this kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So you just get interested in that. And I specifically remember some kids getting called to the principal's office, and I had this like aha moment that like it was the same kids that get called every day. And I remember thinking, like, even though I was like a shrimpy dude, like I think I can do something to help these kids.
Hmm.
I don't know what it was. And so that's how I kind of thought of applying this geeky, scientific, inquisitive nature that I had about human beings. I was like, I wonder how I can use psychology and learn about it to help people. And so I went to college. I got a degree in psychology, a degree in child psychology. I got my master's in social work because once you get into the psychological field, you realize that it's mostly diagnosing people with what's wrong.
Hmm.
And I wasn't as much interested in that as I was, okay, but who cares? Let's see what we can do to make things better. So it's kind of more of a functional medicine to psychology's like big pharma is kind of how I think of it, you know.
Hmm.
Most people think social workers, they just give hugs for a living. That's not actually the case. I have the exact same training as other people, but what we do is we look forward instead of the past, you know, and so that's what I'm all about. So I after college, I had a slew of jobs as you do when you get interested in stuff. I worked at a domestic abuse violence therapy center. I worked with kids. I worked with the men. I worked with people who were experiencing homelessness and different addictions and mental health illness because of that. I worked with get this, Harrison. I was the only guy, well, second guy, who worked in a high school of only teen moms.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there was 200 students who were there, about 80 children because some of the moms were pregnant,
Hmm.
and then there was Hans, the social studies teacher, and me. We were the only dudes. And so that was like wild. I've worked in a crisis residence where people want to go when they want to, or where they go when they want to die, or they're too anxious to get out of bed or something like that. So I've had a slew of these jobs because I wanted to make an impact. But then somewhere along the line, all of my friends who were engineers, bankers, systems analysts, they're going to Costa Rica, and I'm working at a restaurant over the weekend to make ends meet. So I'm 32 years old, living in my friend's basement with
Hmm.
3 degrees, a master's degree, and 2 jobs.
Oof.
And I got sick of it. And finally, thank goodness, Michelle, one of my friend's wives finally said, well, then why don't you do something about it
Hmm.
instead of complaining about never having money? And so I went to the library and I asked the librarian, this like sweet old lady, what should I do? And she said, she gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, wow.
And so I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I finally had like some sort of financial goal. And so I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 9 months
Okay.
and saved 8 grand and I bought a duplex,
Okay.
and then I bought another duplex. And then, I got married because it turns out if you're not in a friend's basement, like women gives you more attention,
Who would have
you
thought?
know?
Who would have
It's
thought?
weird. It's
Yeah,
weird.
it's
That's a free tidbit to your audience right there.
the first one is
It's
free.
like, so we had a kid. I was diagnosed with terminal kidney disease. I was
Wow.
given 10 years to live. Um, Used, psychological principles, mindset, things like that to beat kidney disease, you know? So like I should start to be not doing so hot here, you know,
Mhm.
in the next few months. And so that really, you know, going through that journey really made me look at myself and the the natural way I've been going through life, just going with the flow and not really questioning things.
Mhm.
When I'm thinking, okay, I've got 3 more years to go here, you know, I better give myself permission to do the things that I was always afraid to do. And so I wanted to start a business, but I can't because, you know, helping people through therapy is the only way to help the world. You know, I want to make more money and take care of my wife and daughter, but, you know, rich people are assholes.
Mhm.
You know, so I had a number of limiting beliefs that I was hiding behind. And so, I mean, thank goodness for this terrible diagnosis because I got to look at my limiting beliefs. Not only that, now I know how to make sodium-free barbecue. I make my own soy sauce. I make my own ketchup, you know, all that kind of stuff. I learned how to do all that stuff. But I'm good now.
Awesome.
So a year ago, my doc said I'm in remission. It was
Awesome.
amazing. It was awesome. So
Congrats.
I'm super stoked about that. Still kind of worried about it, but I do now eat like Chipotle and
Okay.
some other foods that were off limits for a long time. Oh man, I grubbed out. I gained like 10 pounds that first month, but now I'm back to good because I feel good when I'm exercising and eating better. So long story short, I got into real estate syndication, which is raising capital from private citizens and investing it into larger projects.
Mhm.
Because people were wanting to know, like, how's this dude who was living in this guy's basement a few years ago? How is he putting together a portfolio? And I want in on that because a lot of people don't know much about financial health. They don't know about acquiring wealth. It's just put it in a 401k, set it and forget it. But that doesn't work, right? It's very emotional. And so I was able to kind of bridge that gap where I can talk about emotions and
Mhm.
talk about finance. So I learned about syndication. But then what I realized is I don't love the transactions. I don't love the due diligence. I don't love walk-in units. You know, I don't love um, finding deals and hunting for deals. What I love is talking to people. What I
Right.
love is inspiring my partners to get the job done. And so I was doing some free work for people, and someone said, you know, this is really, really good. Can we meet consistently? I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And then he said, you know, people would pay good money for this. And I was like, now I'm listening. You know, like, so that kind of sparked this bridge, this unity. And the more I was looking into it, the more I just like get excited. And I get super stoked and excited every single day to learn more and more about sports psychology, business psychology, ACT, all these kinds of things. And I put together my own method called the STARS method. And it's a culmination of 11 different psychological theories. And it's a lot of looking at your past, your present, your future, and beyond, really, to create your legacy. And what it does when people go through this thing is you raise a ton more capital, you grow your assets under management, your portfolio. What did my client say yesterday? I just feel relieved. I just feel relieved. She said, I don't feel like anything's holding me back. You know, just yesterday, my client was crying a bit, and she's like, 25 years I've been hanging on to this, Chris.
Mhm.
She's like, we've been meeting for 4 or 5 times. And she's like, I don't feel like anything's holding me down. And that's how you get ahead in business. You
Absolutely.
know, that's how you grow. Everyone wants to know the strategies. But the tricky part about that is you want to know strategies because your subconscious is telling you you're not good enough anyway. So you keep looking external. You keep blaming the external. Oh, if I knew more, if I knew more people, if I could do this, if only I knew this system. And those are sneaky subconscious ways that our brain keeps us from changing
Mhm.
because that's what our brain's goal is to keep us safe. And it keeps us safe by keeping us the same. So when we take a look at those beliefs from the past and we're like, oh crap, I've been hanging on to that. And that goes away, then you're gone.
All right, so let's take a a step back for a second, or let's go back to something. And that's one thing I kind of want to touch that I feel like we both share is as well. I've raised capital as well too. I just got into it 3 months ago, and I guess coming from I have 15 years of DJing professionally. I guess it's a huge limiting belief is that sometimes is that like when we are really good, a lot of people don't know how to monetize things that they're really good at and they enjoy doing. And I believe it sometimes stop people because like, oh, I like knitting, but like knitting can only take me so far. And I guess it's that limiting belief that like limits people from having or knowing the possibility of like where your knitting can get you, clothes, merchandise, selling knitting supplies and stuff like that. And I think that's a very powerful thing. One thing I wanted to ask you is, in your experience, what's one of the most common limiting beliefs that people seem to hold on to that keep them from achieving the success that they can really achieve that in their niche or their business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And in generally, I run into three of them, you know? And so the first one is I'm not good enough,
Hmm.
right? I'm not worthy enough. And that manifests itself in a number of different ways. It's imposter syndrome, it's procrastination, it's social comparison. I'll never do what that person did,
Hmm.
you know? It's stuff like that. What it really is it comes down to like I'm afraid of success. I'm afraid of success because then people are going to have their eyes on me,
Hmm.
and then I'm gonna have to be worthy. So that's the first one, is feeling unworthy. The second one that I see a lot is a fear of other people's emotions. So I fear that what I do and say is going to piss you off, or it's
Hmm.
going to disappoint you, it's going to anger you, and it's going to cause you to say bad things about me. And then I'm getting all these people are like gossiping about me or drama. I feel intimidated. I can't
Hmm.
control it. Down below that is a fear of losing control. I need to control things, right? And then the third thing is fear of rejection. And
Hmm.
this is the biggest one, because our biggest need as people is connection. We're social creatures. There
Absolutely.
was in the 40s and 50s in psychology, you can't do this anymore. But in the 40s and 50s was a number of psychological studies about what happens to monkeys specifically, or different types of animals, if we take their parents away, if we take a kid away. And now it's instead of your parent there, it's a sock who looks like a monkey. Next it's a wire with eyes on it. Next it's just a wire. And monkeys would scratch themselves to death. Like, it's just like they don't do that stuff because I don't even think they teach those studies anymore. They just teach you the principles because it's like gruesome. So what we feel like when we get rejected is I'm not good enough, right? Plus I was afraid of your emotions. Now that was justified. I should have been. And now the connection that we had has been betrayed. I
Hmm.
feel betrayed. And our minds aren't rational, right? Our minds aren't rational at all. And so what we think is Harrison doesn't like me. He's going to tell everyone he knows. And then they're going to put it all over Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Then everyone's going to know. And people are going to make fun of me. And then my friends are going to know. My family's going to know. And I'm kicked out and I'm on my own. I don't have any friends or food or anything like that. And life is destroyed. we
Hmm.
we think that's going to happen. We take it that far in our brains. And
Absolutely.
so really three fears is the fear that I'm not good enough, the fear of your emotions, and the fear of rejection.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. It's I'm sure I and everyone else has have dealt with at least one of those three, especially in entrepreneurial business. And for me, like the biggest thing was getting over the fear of even putting out content on the internet because you're so scared of.
Mm.
It's kind of crazy because in my head, it's like it kind of goes back to like a high school kind of like feeling that like you feel
Oh,
like
for
you're in
sure.
this like small like microcosm where like I feel like we never get out of the thought process of I'm going to see all these people tomorrow and the day afterwards. Like we're exposed to the same 400 people every day, and that they're always
Hmm.
like talking about it and stuff like that. So that's a very interesting, and it kind of helped me think of like fear is as a door, and on the other side of that door is opportunity, and you have to open it up. And I feel like it's those limiting beliefs that separate the 1%, 10% from the majority of society. Because when you're working 9 to 5 or you're just going through the motions, everything is laid. in front of you, and there's really no unknown. And I believe as humans, we've sort of like we're accustomed to knowing. Yeah, as I say, our bodies are trying to preserve our lineage and our lives.
Mhm.
And as an entrepreneur, we're really just like moving sort of like blindly with like no sort of like guidance, because like there's no like for me it was always crazy how like we go to school and there's like no class on like on like the entrepreneurial journey. Just like there's business, this is how business works, but like they don't ever teach you that, like, when you start off, like, you don't know what's going to happen. It's like the unknown, but it's like in all these other subjects that we can study, we know exactly what the result is. If I go to college, if I take these classes, I'm going to become a doctor as long as I meet these metrics, or I'm going to become a lawyer or whatnot. And it's just the fear of the unknown that I feel like humans as well sort of separates those who can embrace that unknown and those who cannot embrace that one unknown
Mm.
and just simply walk the path that's laid in front of them. So I think that's a very interesting point you put out, Chris. So let's talk more about your services and sort of how you were able to, I guess, coming from your real estate background, it's easy for you to relay the similar situations you have with these syndicators and such. So tell us more about your services.
Yeah, well, first of all, I gotta go back because you were talking about this is like high school. Dude, you're gunning for my job, man, because you're about right. It's actually middle school where we
Mm,
start to develop these limiting beliefs.
mm,
We get these things called post-operational thought. And so all those awkwardness of middle school, it plays itself out all the time on social media. You see it all the time. And this is part of what I do with my services for people is I help them study the past. I help them go back to who was influential in their lives. What were some events that they remember? What were some of the mundane things that happened all the time? And what messages did they get? We all got certain types of messages back then.
mm,
And here's where our current limiting beliefs came from is then. Stuff that was really, really good advice then, it's just outdated now. It's just outdated. I spent a lot of time with my grandma growing up. I still like to cook, all that kind of stuff. And so she would teach me that you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Is that something that was in your family, Harrison?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You roll the punches.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And for me in particular, it was about mealtime.
Hmm.
My grandma lived on a farm. We're not going to get fruit snacks 50 miles away in town, So you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. You eat what's on your plate. Excellent, excellent, excellent advice for having a kid fill up so that the second dishes aren't done. I'm like, I'm hungry, grandma. You know? She's like, well, you should have eaten what you got. You get what you get and don't throw a fit, right? That is great advice then. But it's awful advice for an entrepreneur. It's awful advice now because we don't get what we get. We throw fits. We
Absolutely.
throw fits for a living. We find stuff that's broken or inefficient and we say, this sucks or this isn't working well. We do it. We experiment and we make mistakes. You know, that you get what you get and don't throw a fit. What's assumed there is you do what's in this box. You do what you're told. You do these acceptable things. If you're outside of that, you're on your own, kid, you
Mm.
know? And so I asked my grandma about that. I was like, Grandma, I called her up, like Granny. She calls me buddy. Yeah, buddy. I was like, Granny. Even people older than her call her Granny, But I was like, hey, Granny. She goes, yeah, buddy. I was like, is it true that you get what you get in thrown for? Oh, heavens, yes. Oh, heavens, yes, it is. And I was like, you know, it happens with food, right? Oh, yeah, you should eat everything on your plate. And I'm like, okay, good, good. Is it okay if I don't believe that anymore? And she was like, well, yes. You're a grown man. You're in charge of your own food. You've got your own family. You've got to figure it out for yourself. Look, I was just trying to get you to sit down and be quiet. So that's what we do. This is part of what I do for my clients is we take a look at those things and then you're going to get some homework assignments to go back and check these facts.
Mm.
Like if it, I was working with a guy yesterday about he can't buy a $12 million apartment building because he was just spending the weekend with his parents and they clipped coupons to go to a buffet. How dare I have wealth?
Mm.
I'm betraying everything that I grew up with. I'm betraying these messages. But a lot of times those messages didn't serve us. They served the people that told them to us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when we go back and we heal from that and we move on from that, we can say, oh, that was really good advice to an 11-year-old boy who was hungry all the time and drank 2 gallons of milk. I drank so much milk, Harrison. Of course I had to, sit down, eat what you want. I'm trying to minimize the amount of money I'm spending on having you here.
Absolutely.
It doesn't fit here. But in our brains, we don't have that context.
Mm,
We tell ourselves 35,000 thoughts every single day. 96% of them are the same as yesterday.
mm,
So we don't have a lot of new stuff. So we believe it. It gets cemented in. It gets cemented in. And so when we are intentional about taking a look in the past and like studying it, like a scientist would, where did these beliefs come from? Who are they serving? Are they still serving me? Do I want to hang on to them or let them go? And how do I get permission to move on? Like we seek permission to move on. That's part of what we do. That's usually like big aha moments and breakthroughs and things like that. When people realize, oh, I don't need to do that. It's not serving me anymore,
mm.
you know? So that's part of it.
It's interesting. As a man of the mind as you are, I wanted to touch on what I've currently been thinking about is how so case in point, I'm talking with someone that showed me trying to show me a video on YouTube, and they're searching on YouTube, and they're like, oh, search this guy's name. It should be like the third or fourth like video down, and I literally couldn't find the video he was talking about because even though we were on the same person's page, the algorithm were showing us the different videos first, and it was the utter and keep in mind, I would say like we're pretty similar in the way we think politically and socially and stuff like that. But just the fact that like we're both on this person's page trying to find a video, I literally had to share my screen in order for him to show me, oh no, keep going down. They're like, wow, like these are none of the videos I'm getting. Like this is, and it's the same person's page. Like we're just going down their videos.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me think about how the echo chamber we live in. So with the algorithm and how they tell us like, nowadays it's the easiest to be rich because we have exposure to like unlimited marketing with social media platforms. And it made me think about like that's a good point, but also makes me think about how we have limiting beliefs because now we are more than ever exposing ourselves to the world rather than one-on-one sales specifically talking with people of our industry like you're talking to a potential investor back in the day phone book or at a meeting with people who are already like-minded, but here we are in a day where we literally are exposing ourselves to millions of people for them to say whatever they want. And that's one thing. And the second thing is just how we live in the world, I feel like, where we live in definites rather than spectrums, even when it comes to political stuff. So here I am, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about like how my political thoughts have changed over the year and how they sort of cannot be defined in a box. But we are made to choose specifically this side or that side, and you need to choose a side not only because it falls in line with the candidate, but also because of the fact that there's no middle ground. Like you have to choose, and it kind of
Mhm.
just makes me think about how like we live in this world where like unless you choose to venture outside of the thoughts that you have with reading or I like to say like reading being a big thing because of the fact that there is no algorithm in the reading. You're picking up a book and you're getting whatever the author is giving you at that time, and you're not being bombarded by similar thought processes and just like your thoughts on the world we're living in now and in the echo chamber and how that could be a very sort of like dangerous thing. Someone reinforcing things. I guess not to be rambling, but just living in a world where your thoughts are being reinforced to the point where you think that it's a definite and anybody that's thinking outside of that chamber you're living in is like must be crazy or there must be something wrong or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start out by saying, Harrison, I think you're crazy.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Anyway, what I'm thinking of is with these two things you talked about, really kind of the echo chamber and how that comes to be and how we fight it. And the second part is this like black and white view of life,
Exactly.
and the rigidity of which we judge things. And I think they both fall under the umbrella of psychology, and they both fall under the umbrella of how our subconscious minds maintain homeostasis.
Mm.
Okay. So our conscious minds are the part in front, right? I've used mine a lot, as you could see. I've burned it off. I had one day I just had this deep thought and just when I had the one thought. But anyway,
Professor.
so yeah, yeah. So our conscious mind does all the wonderful things for us. You know, it thinks, it acts, it feels, it can watch a movie and be sad and happy at the same time.
Mm.
It can make sense of art and draw parallels. It can read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison and somehow relate it back to our lives. You know, like our conscious minds have so much depth and nuance to them. It's mind blowing.
Mm.
So how the heck do we organize all this stuff? Well, thank goodness we have a subconscious mind, which is back here and connects our conscious mind with our body. So it's very interested in feelings. It's very interested in making judgments super fast. So a
Mm.
blink of an eye, boom, my subconscious made 10 decisions in that time.
Wow.
So it makes decisions super quick. In psychology, we call them schemas. I think out in the world, we call them isms or biases or stereotypes, you know, very quick. Like a kid, like let's say we're 1 year old, red car goes by, fire truck. Because every red car is a fire truck, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have those as grown-ups too. We just have our conscious mind that helps hide them or filter them a bit more.
Mm.
And so getting to the first part about, you know, being in this echo chamber and knowing that things are true, you know, remember we have 35,000 thoughts a day and 96% of them are recurring. Now it seems like our, you know, social media feeds are the exact same. We only get the same things.
Mm.
And there's a theory in psychology that's been proven true, which is called narrative identity theory. Narrative meaning stories, identity, ourselves. So the more you hear a story, the more we think the story is us. The more
Mm.
you hear a story, the more you think it's true. So it gets cemented in because we just hear it over and over and over. You know that Miley Cyrus song, Flowers? I
Yes.
can buy myself flowers. I finally started to like it after I heard it 1,000
Mm.
times, right?
Yeah, it happens like
That,
that.
I mean, the top 40 radio songs, they know we're going to break you down eventually, and you're going to know all these songs, right?
Absolutely, whether you like it or
It's the
not.
same thing with social media feeds, you know, and we get it and we get hardened and we believe it to be true. We don't think it to be true because this isn't conscious. This is subconscious because we've
Mm.
heard it so many times. We don't think it to be true. We believe it to be true. And our beliefs are trenched in. And so that's the danger here. And the black and white thinking is similar to that. Black and white thinking is usually a defense mechanism. A
Okay.
defense mechanism is something that happens automatically to maintain homeostasis.
Mm.
So remember, let's say we were to meet someone, let's say we were to see a red car go by, and you say, there's a fire truck. And I know it's not a fire truck. Now I have what's called cognitive dissonance,
Mm.
cognitive thoughts, dissonance, mismatch. The outside is a mismatch with the inside. So
Mm.
what do? That's like a no-brainer for our brain. Hey, no pun intended there. So it's really our brain goes, oh, we change our internal.
Mm.
You're wrong. You're dumb. You're stupid. You're always stupid. You
Mm.
know, we take it like that. So we protect our self-image, we protect our self-identity by choosing black and white thinking because it's easier. A lot of times this happens because of trauma. And by trauma, I don't mean like murder or like physical trauma. Sometimes I mean just huge changes in your life.
Mhm.
Grief and loss can cause trauma, which causes black and white thinking. Having a child can do that. I remember when we had like a 6-month-old daughter, and my wife put her coffee mug down, and I said, "Move that coffee mug. If she can reach it, it will spill." And she was like, "Settle down, psychologist." You know, I live in the Midwest, so we're very passive aggressive. So in my mind, I'm thinking it's black and white. If the coffee's there, it will spill.
Mm.
You know, not knowing that there's this gray area life. And that's what we're missing out on because all the beautiful parts about life are the gray areas. You know, talking to someone who is going to vote exactly wrong or
Mhm.
exactly wrong, exactly opposite of you. Here we are.
There you
Say,
go, black and white.
yep. But being able to talk with someone who votes exactly opposite of you, being able to talk with someone who is older or younger than you, who looks different than you, speaks a different language, and to
Mm,
be able to just listen. I think that's what we're missing out on when the social media gives us this same old algorithm, is we're missing out on listening.
mm.
I think we really grow a lot from listening, and we're not getting it. We're being fed, so we're losing critical thinking. And you know what? We're okay with that.
Yeah,
Our brains are like, yep, I never wanted to do that anyway.
it
I
makes it
wanted
easy.
recess in school, and you made me critical think. Now you gave me Facebook, I'm in, you
Yeah,
know?
and it's just fed to you, and your body is like, this is easier than just thinking myself. I just follow along with whatever I've chosen to put on a pedestal and be authority over things in my life.
Exactly. Which goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Harrison, if I can make an aside here,
Of
is
course.
that a lot of times people choose a W-2 job and to not be an entrepreneur because it's easier,
Mm,
because you can follow, because you don't have to make up your mind. There isn't that gray area. There isn't, I had a really good month this month and then two crappy months.
absolutely.
There isn't the, I got to get myself pumped up for it. It's that mindless social media feed of life. You don't have to stare into the abyss and say, who am I?
Absolutely.
You have
Absolutely.
someone else who does that for you. In fact, they pay you.
Yeah, they will.
So it's a
They'll
pretty
pay
sweet
you.
gig for a lot of people.
That's interesting. You say like I said before, it's kind of like just like I said, it's kind of crazy because when you think about it, like the W-2 lifestyle, and one thing for me as I've grown to is that I never want to be that type of entrepreneur to be like, oh no, you have a W-2, like it's all about being an entrepreneur. And I've come to the realization it's like, for some people that W-2 is a passion for them, whether it's service to others or something like that. And like I get it if that's what you want to do. I just am a firm believer of just not letting that determine your financial future for your family.
Mm,
And I try to tell a lot of people like I'm not knocking you having a job. I'm knocking you not taking control over things that you can have a control over in your life. Because I feel like some people just get sucked into this whole like, oh, I got a job, I get a pension, and then I should be fine when I get old. And it's like we're getting to a point where it's like the truth is coming out. Like you are not going to be fine with just that matching pension for the rest of your life. One thing I hate is that a lot of people find that out too late in life. And here we are, we have
mm,
people that are going back to work in their, 60s and 70s. And it's just like really hard to believe that these people were living in this dogma where, I put in my years and, I'm rewarded and I get to spend the next 30 years of my life, resting and relaxing. And I was very fortunate that from a young age, I worked for a catering company and I was working from the time I was like 12 or 13 years old as as strong enough I was to carry a tray. And I worked just work with these guys that were like 3 times, 4 times my age. And they always told me, it's like, if you have a dream, like go for it, man, because you don't want to be old and like be like me and have to work. And it always stuck with me. And then I got into DJing and I would see these guys who I used to work with back when I was younger. They're like, oh man, I said, yeah, can't complain, can't complain. He's like, yeah, I was working for so and so for 40 years. And I just come in and he just tells me he's like moving to Boca Raton and it's over just like that. And I'm
mm.
just like, oh my God, like you were working for this man for 40 years, help building equity in his company. And I can't complain because it was transactional. You knew exactly what was going on. You were paid to be there. He paid you. It was never an issue like that. But it's the fact that like you're working for this man for 40 years, help him build equity in his company. And now he gets to retire at 59 and spend the rest of his days like on the beach. And it's just like, I just wish people would just see. And that's something I also want you to kind of speak on too, is how a lot of people seem to lack forethought and it's into the future because a lot of people think five years down the line. And I guess because I wanted to be a doctor when I was young, I was always thinking 10, 15 years down the line because you know where things are going, but it's very people seem to live very much in the moment or very into the instant. So what do you think that comes from as humans that we seem to only think maybe a year or two ahead or maybe five max for the majority of us people, it seems.
Yeah, I think you have a rare trait of thinking ahead. I do. I think that most people Well, obviously they live for like this second, this 15 seconds, you know. Um, I mean, like diets and things like that talk about getting in the red zone. You know, when you're in the red zone, then Burger King starts to smell really good, even though you haven't had it in years or something like that, you know, because you have to have it now. That instant gratification is needed and amplified within our body with chemicals and hormones and all that kind of stuff. But even with talking about time, humans notoriously mismanage time. You know, we write down a task and we think it's going to take an hour, it's going to take 2.5 to 3 hours.
Mm.
Research is overwhelmingly supportive of this, that we misjudge time by about 3x. So
Wow.
I'll get this done, I'll get this much done today, when really it's a 3 days of stuff.
Mm.
And then we beat ourselves up for not getting it done. So we're not very good at looking into the future. We are not at all. What happens best actually to plan for the future is take some of the time off. Be like, what do I want to go in a month? You know, and work towards that. Have a very, very large, big goal that you're working towards. The BHAGs, you know, the big, hairy, audacious goal that you're working towards, and then
Mhm.
do very, very, very small chunks to get there.
Mm.
You know, if you make a to-do list that's 10 things long and you get 3 things done today, well, tomorrow you've got a list of 7, but you've got another 10. So now you've got a list of 17. That becomes too overwhelming and daunting. But if you have a list of 1 or 2 things and you get it done, you have free time, great. The guy who just won the Nobel Prize in math, I need to look up who he is because I quote him a lot. I love his saying, or his answer to when someone asked him, "How did you do this? How did you do this much research?" And he said, "I have one rule: I only work 3 hours a day." He said,
Wow.
"Because the human brain can't stay engaged fully for more than 3 hours. So I work 3 hours and then I live my life."
Mm.
And so we really are putting a lot more value into working a lot of hours instead of working great hours.
Mm.
You know, I think we can make a parallel here with physical health. I think we'd all agree that if you were to take an hour out of your day, now you only have 23 hours. But if you spent that hour exercising, your other 23 hours are going to be better. And with mental health, we can draw similar lines. It's not quite as dramatic and it's a bit more nuanced. But if we were to take some time off to enjoy life in ways that give us intrinsic motivation, things that fill us up from the inside, then the rest of our hours are that much better.
Mm.
And so in the whole like how do we figure out this space-time continuum thing, I do think that you're kind of a rare bird here and that you were thinking of the future a lot. But I think most people could do a much better job creating big visions and missions for what they want from their lives. I also see that absence when you talk to people who aren't entrepreneurs. You know, like we had our national night out or whatever a couple weeks ago at the neighbor's house, and we're out there talking, and it's me and like the other dads. You know, like we all get together, and then we just consume all the leftovers. You know, and the talk was what PS5 game they were playing.
Oh,
And I couldn't relate.
yeah.
I couldn't relate and I felt left out because I couldn't. And I thought about like dusting off the old Xbox 360. I like to play Madden football back in the day.
Oh,
So
yes.
I actually did. And I have like Madden Football '03 with Mike Vick on the cover. I mean,
Oh,
like,
wow.
this isn't a new game, right?
No updated
I'm just Yeah,
version.
yeah, yeah, totally. All those guys are analysts now or whatever, but like I just couldn't relate because like that's how they spend their time. And it's great because part of me was envious because they have free time and what's that like?
Hmm.
You know, instead I'm driven for a living. You know, I constantly feel like I need to do more stuff. And so I think we're always in this battle of balancing. And I'll leave it with this is that a lot of people say, "Hey, Chris, how do I get work-life balance?" And that's a fallacy. It's not true.
Mm.
It's a verb. Balance is a verb. We are balancing all the time. You know, where it's always a push-pull, you know, especially I live in Minnesota. We get seasons a lot. And
Okay.
so we're changing it, you know, like right now where it's like the end of summer and it's the beginning of fall and like we're starting to think about like, all fall so great and it's awesome. It's getting a little cooler, have a bonfire, have a little beer at night, afterwards. But the sun is setting quicker.
Yeah.
So like life has changed, So now I'm like, the sun sets at 7:30, and I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, now I'm staying up later because now my body is used to being awake at night.
Hmm.
And so I'm waking up later. I have less energy. So now I'm like, oh, I made it through the whole day. I better take a load off and have someone over and have a beer. Like,
Yeah,
so the cycle just
absolutely.
continues. And it'll be like that. And I know it's happening. And then eventually I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to bed at 9 like I used to, getting up at 4:30 and just tackling this because this is what makes me happy in life. But we're always balancing, you know?
Interesting. That the PS5 kind of reminds me. So I'm not, it's kind of crazy because like I'm not into sports like that. Like I'll keep track of it and I'll watch like playoff games, stuff like that. But it kind of reminds me of like football where it's like, you're walking around, I'm like walking my dog in the neighborhood. I walk my dog a lot because he has to walk a lot. And people are like, "Yeah, man, you see the game last night?" I'm just like, nah, I didn't, but I heard, X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of crazy because they're like, some guy, I was talking to a conversation, he said, "Man, how you not into football?" And I was like, well, it's kind of like complicated. So, well, what do you mean how complicated? I said, well, like I don't want to get too deep with you, but I studied. I got my BS in biology. I was on my way to medical school, and then life happened. And I said, when heads make that kind of contact, and it was back, and when I was on my way, or Junior Seau passed away. And it's when
Mm,
they first did the thing where they're like, oh, like I want him to study, I want them to study my brain. Like that was a big thing. And then, I remember the movie with Will Smith came out about the CT. It was the first time people were talking about CT. Am I correct?
hmm
And like the movie came out and then it just like vanished. And I was like, what happened to the movie with Will Smith about the guy? And I was like, this is so weird. And I remember it kind of hit me where I was reading something and they were talking about like Rome with the bread and the circus. And I'm not knocking anyone that like watches football. Like I totally get it. But for me, it was like knowing the science behind it and then like having this whole thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna go and watch these gladiators for like 4 hours on a Sunday. And I'm like, that's a lot of time. Like,
hmm
and then like, oh, the bread and the circus, we got the football players. Oh yeah, we got the beer too for you, man. Like, here's the beer for you too. And I'm just like, it kind of made me think like, wow, it's kind of crazy. Like, you watch the circus and they give this beer, and you get too intoxicated and it's like terrible for you. And then, it kind of like made me think about this how like I'm like, man, like, and which drives me to my question is to what do you think is the reason why our society is sort of pushing into a direction where you go to school for 12 years. Here are the set things that you're going to learn in school. And we're going to omit certain things from that are crucial for you to survive as an adult. Case in point, um, I go to school really good in biology, got really good grades. I go to college, graduate from college, I get my job. And I was like, you know what? I have no idea how to pay my taxes. And it was like the craziest thing to me. Like I took Calc 1 and Calc 2, and here I am looking at this taxes and they're taking all this money out of my check. And I'm like, well, how's this work? And I remember I was fortunate that like I had a lot of affluent clients. And I was talking to one of my clients one time for DJing about like how I'm paying these taxes. And I remember he laughed. He was like, oh yeah. He said, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you guys yeah, they take it out for you, man. And they make it super easy for him. I'm like, well, what are you saying? He's like, I don't pay any taxes. I'm like, you don't pay any tax. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I run a business. You know what I mean? Like, with real estate and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't get how that works. He was like, all right. He's like, I'm gonna give you the short story, but basically, taxes always favors the business person. I'm like, well, how does that make sense? He's like, well, you got to think about it. Like, I create jobs, you have a job, so therefore, I am perpetuating society, and you're just like going along with the program. And I'm just like, interesting. He's like, yeah, man, like it's a whole like program. And he's like, and I don't blame you because I assume you, even if you went to public or private school, like it really doesn't matter because the fact of the matter is that my father had to teach me about tax deductions, and we go to a tax guy who just saves me money. He's like, I said, well, you have to pay to get your taxes done. He's like, yeah, I have a complicated business, but the fact that like I pay this tax man and he saves me more money, and I'm just like, he was like, yeah, man. He's like, either you're contributing or you're just going the flow of society. And the government's always going to want to pay, going to want me to. They're going to do the best they can to try to get me to keep doing my thing because I'm creating this thing. So I'm like, where does this? How, and I don't mean to go off the rails a little bit, but why do you feel like this is in our society where we are sort of instilled these dogmas of just going with the flow rather than becoming an entrepreneur, which you would think in a capitalist society would benefit us more rather than just being a worker.
Yeah. Well, again, if we look at the brain, it's easy. It's easy to be a
Mhm.
worker. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to ask someone to have the courage. Tell me about your taxes. We don't do that. We don't talk about that kind of stuff. Like it takes courage. It takes some real pain.
Mm,
You know, as humans, we don't move towards what makes us happier. We run from what we hate. you know, which is why we remember rejections and negative comments 10, 12 times more than positive comments. It doesn't really move the needle for us. It doesn't keep us safe, and so we're totally content going through that system. Like
mm.
a set it and forget it, we're on board. We're on board. Entrepreneurship is not a set it and forget it. Entrepreneurship could be, I don't know if it's parenting or entrepreneurship. It is probably the wildest personal
Mhm.
development journey you'll ever go on.
Wow.
So it's very easy to just not buy a ticket. It's very easy to miss that train. It's very, very, very easy to go to your neighbor's house when the football game's on and escape.
Mm,
That's one of the main differences I've seen between people who are like employees and entrepreneurs is employees live for the escape. Entrepreneurs really don't give a crap about the escape. We want the hunt. We want more. We want the intensity. We want the struggle. We want the fight where they're like, no way, man. Give me 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon. And
mhm.
now it's on Monday night too.
And
Yes,
Thursday?
thank you.
Thursday
Like
too?
that kind of thing. And it's just easy. It's just easier. People will always go towards what's easier.
Mm,
You know, if you're a parent and you're have a kid in school, it's easy for you to assume the schools teach them everything they need to know,
mm,
especially when you've got everything else going on, which is why we have like lower, middle, and upper class assumptions in just how they go about life.
mm,
I can tell you live in a middle class neighborhood because people are talking about sports. Middle class people live for sports. Lower class people live for how can we get more resources? How can we partner up to get more resources? Middle class people need the escape. Upper class people would not be talking about the game. They would be talking about, hey, did you hear so and so open this? Or we got this going on over here. Or hey, why don't you come with me to this charitable event that we're going to?
mm,
It's resources, escape, giving back.
mm,
That's like the spectrum of what people talk about, and so that's how you can find the connections. So I think it's just easier to not be an entrepreneur, which
mm,
is why it's so hard to be an entrepreneur and why it's so hard to find a group of people that you fit in with and belong to as an entrepreneur. It would be super easy for me to hang out at Darren's house next door. All I got to do is get a PS5,
mm.
and like probably one of those like headsets,
Absolutely.
and like we're good. We're good. Where it's super hard for me to maintain my interests and his interests and for us to get along, because they're dissimilar.
Absolutely. It's kind of it kind of makes me think of the like tribal mentality sometimes when I go to family functions or just even the other functions it's very rarely like I guess people are so it's interesting, like I'm trying to think of what we were doing. We were like it was some sort of family function. We were out somewhere, and I was telling like my wife's like, you should talk more. And I feel bad because like I just don't have anything in common with anyone here. And it's like not like I'm being antisocial, but it's just like I don't like. care about like anything that any of these people are talking about. And it's like no shade to them, but it's just like I just don't care. And it's like almost get to the point where like I feel like I'd rather work rather than to be at a function. But of course you do what you got to do for your spouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, one last question, Chris.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
and this is a little bit off the wall. What excites you about the future, and what makes you fearful about the future, about in reference to where our society is heading?
Off the wall question. Does that have anything to do with your DJ experience? You played some off the wall, didn't you?
Oh yeah, Michael Jackson.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love the cover of that because it's off the wall, but really you can actually see like the wall,
Oh yeah,
like the blue wall.
yeah,
Anyway,
oh yeah.
my daughter's getting into Michael Jackson. She's watching old videos of his and
Oh,
she's trying to tell her friends, is that real? Is
yeah,
it?
oh, you best believe it. You better believe it's real.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I got lost in it. What was your question?
What excites you about the future, about where our society is heading, and what are you sort of concerned about or fearful about where
Mm.
our society is
What I
heading?
love about the future of society is what people complain about a lot. I love the fact that younger people care. I love the fact that young people are inclusive. And I love the fact that like just companies and people are more transparent about stuff.
Mhm.
What I fear is that people are going to stop asking those questions. What I fear is that we're going to lose the ability to get along in person. We're going to lose the ability to get along with people and have discourse, disagreements, ways that we can learn from each other through an argument, through
Mhm.
disagreements. How can we make each other better? That's what I'm concerned about. But I'm super stoked about innovation, technology, inclusion, talking about feelings, including psychology. Psychology that's about being great, not psychology that's about healing.
Mhm.
Psychology that's about finding the new you. I think that's what's exciting.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Schwagerl. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you got it,
Okay, awesome,
Harrison.
awesome. Please let the audience know where they can find you or how they can reach out in contact with you.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I post every day on LinkedIn, or you could find me at my website, infiniteskies.life. There's a bunch of resources there to help you with all the mental health up and downs of entrepreneurship to keep yourself going and mentally tough.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. It's very important that we have people like you. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You're here to help entrepreneurs, and that's what it's all about, man. So thank you very much, Chris.
Hey, thank you for the invitation, Harrison. It was an honor, man. All right, take care.
Take care.